Hey Kapowians, welcome back. It's our first episode for 2017 and it's our Australia Day special. I'm Jill.
And I'm Pete. And for all our international viewers out there, you may not be familiar with the two flags behind us. Of course, one is the Australian flag, while the other one is the flag of the traditional owners of our land, the Aboriginal people.
Which brings us to our first topic, and that's Aboriginal superheroes in comics. Luke Pearson from NITV has compiled a list of characters that you may or may not know are actually Aboriginal.
G'day, this is Ash for Kapow. On this Australia Day special, and otherwise known for some people as Invasion Day or Survival Day, and the reason that I mention that is because we're here with Luke Pearson from Indigenous X and the senior digital producer for NITV. We're having a chat today about Aboriginal culture and Aboriginal comic books which have appeared throughout time. Luke, welcome along to Kapow. How are you going?
Very well. How's yourself?
Very well, very well. It's important to know, and this wasn't something that I wasn't really aware of, that there are actually some Indigenous comics or Indigenous comic book characters that have appeared throughout time over the years.
And there's a lot more than I realised when I started. I thought I'd find 6 or 7 and ended up with a list of about 20, I think. So
it was a fascinating article. It was fantastic. And the list seems to keep growing, and it's good. It's really important that we've got this list actually up there and happening now, because you didn't really find anything like this list up until you started to research.
No, well, that's, whenever you start a new article, you're like, has someone actually done this before? And there were a few that would mention 2 or 3 or, talking about another issue and just an offhanded reference, but there wasn't a good comprehensive list that I could find. And the moment I started, anything you put out online, and you guys would know making videos for YouTube, the commenters are quick to let you know anything you got wrong.
Yeah.
So I put it out there in the hopes that people would come and say, oh, you missed one, here's another one, here's another one. So I expect we'll be updating this article every month or two for the foreseeable future, and hopefully not just with old ones that we missed, but new ones that are being created.
Excellent. And if you're watching this and you have one to add, we're going to give you the details a little bit later on to add to the list as well and to get it in contact with Luke. Now, comic books are a fantastic place to grow the imagination and to go into another world. Do you think comic books are the ideal place to educate and also maybe promote Aboriginal heritage and culture?
Yeah, well, and any range of topics, and I think especially difficult topics for kids. We think so much about how do we educate kids, and before I did this stuff I used to actually be a primary teacher, and so making learning cool for kids is that infinite challenge. But the moment you can create that immersive world that you're in, and you follow that journey of the characters and deal with their day-to-day struggles and learn about their background. When I think about my own early views on politics, on race, on culture, a lot of it came from rap music, a lot of it came from comic books, a lot of it came from movies, and so I think, and even still now, a lot of what I get comes from watching YouTube videos, comes from reading articles online that aren't traditional education, aren't documentaries, but are just pop culture that has this awesome little bit of trivia or this awesome bit of insight that expands my mind. And so I think it's brilliant.
One of the first, or one of the earliest reported Aboriginal characters in a comic book was Willy Willy. Tell us about that, and it's fascinating. It's way back 1943.
Yeah, and again, the earliest one I can find. If you've got an earlier one, please let me know. We'd love to add it to the list. But yeah, this little Aboriginal boy, so was it Mollo the Mighty, an alien who crash lands to Earth. So I think a lot of the early superheroes had that Superman style alien crashing to Earth.
Yeah.
And Willy Willy is very much a caricature of that day. He's got the afro, he's got the big red lips, but he taught Mollo how to speak English. And so, yeah, it's that really interesting contrast. And you can see in the article he's sitting on the shoulders. And the person who put me onto that one said, he was usually sitting on his shoulders. For some reason, this big alien superhero had beaten up all the bank robbers and the bad guys. This little Koori kid sitting on his shoulder the whole way talking to him. And yeah, I just think that's really interesting. And it's that mix of, like I say, you look at the imagery today, that's a pretty racist caricature. That was pretty popular of the time, but there were some redeeming characteristics, like this little kid spoke English well enough to teach him English. And so a lot of representation of Aboriginal people at the time was very much the noble savage in the bush sort of stuff. And so, yeah, to see that mix come through in these characters it's hard to try and get into the head of writers, not Aboriginal writers, in 1943, what he would have been thinking about Aboriginal people, what he would have wanted to put out for his audience. But for that little Aboriginal kid who was born in 1935, reading
and to be represented.
That's where else was he going to see someone of himself, fighting crime with a superhero, and teaching him English, like having a valuable role.
Yeah.
So it's very easy, and I'm the first to go, yeah, it was shocking. Like, you look at it, you're just like, oh, that's cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But for its time and place, it still had importance. It still had value.
And it would have been groundbreaking as well.
That's right. And I think a lot of these ones, even through the early 80s, you still, for young Aboriginal kids growing up, there wasn't much out there for them.
Yeah. One of them I remember, and we were just having the chat before, I didn't realise was actually an Aboriginal version of the Phantom. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, we're talking about Condom Man, or maybe Condo Man to some. Once I read the article and I saw Condom Man, instantly it came back to me about who Condom Man was. And I remember Condom Man, but it almost seems like a bit of a piss take.
Yeah, well, I think there was a bit of tongue-in-cheek about it, and I think that was important because that at the time, mid-80s, was trying to talk about the stigma of STDs, HIV, which was, a huge fear there. And actually, it came from Arnie Graceland Smallwood, was an Aboriginal health worker up in Queensland, and her and other Aboriginal health workers were like, how can we get the message out? At the time, for those of us old enough to remember, there was the Grim Reaper.
At first, only gays and IV drug users were being killed by AIDS. But now we know every one of us could be devastated by it.
Bowling people over and
way to
falling,
go, Simon Reynolds.
and those fear campaigns that sadly Australia, most of the things we talk either fear or insult. You toss it, put that in the bin, drink and drive, you're a bloody idiot. Speed, and you go.
Yeah.
Whereas they were like, that's not really resonating with Aboriginal people. What's something that we can put out there that will tell that story and break down that stigma?
Yeah.
And so I think it really came for the right reasons. And listen, you yourself remember it, 30 odd years later. So it did what it needed to do at the time. And the Phantom, growing up, like my dad loved the Phantom as a kid. We all loved the Phantom as a kid. There's something about the Phantom that resonates, I think, with a lot of Aboriginal people. So he was the obvious superhero to emulate. I think if you're going to make Condom Man, you inherently know it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but for whatever reason, it worked. And he's still around today.
Aboriginal characters throughout comics, they've been peppered out through time, but it seems like mid to late 80s may have been the golden era, I guess.
Yeah, there was certainly a huge influx. I mean, on my list it goes 1943 straight to, I think, 81, and then nothing until 86. And then between 86, 88, 89, there's 7 or 8 of them come from that period. And the best I can work out, Crocodile Dundee, 1986, had an Aboriginal character and a lot of interest in Australia that came from it, and the 1988 bicentennial celebrations and Aboriginal protests to them, which were unprecedented at the time. There were like tens of thousands of people marching about the 88 ones, and that would have received international attention at the time. And so that, the comic book writers of the day, and they're going, oh, there's something in this, there's a story I can tell. And like you said about comics being a great vehicle to talk about culture, to talk about heritage, like you think about comics like the X-Men, which has Bishop and Shard and Gateway from the list. That was a direct analogy for the civil rights movement of the time when it was created. And so to expand that to talk about racism, to talk about culture, to talk about, was not a far reach for the writers who wanted to go in that way. Like I said, a lot of the writers, I think they knew the word Aboriginal, they knew the word dream timing, and off they went with that knowledge.
Let's see what we can get from that.
Yeah, that's it.
We go through time. There's been some through the 90s and the noughties, but we've actually been able to get a series.
The international community has accused us of violating human rights. But these creatures are not human.
We do not share the same DNA. We don't know exactly what they are. This only reaffirms this government's commitment to keep these subhumans within the zone.
Can we just accept that they are not sub-anything, but people? What you're really talking about is the forcible removal of innocent people from their homes.
The TV show Clever Man has been revolutionary, and I think the first time in that sort of forum we've been able to see Aboriginal spirituality, analogies for racism, for modern, and written, created, produced by Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I think the major flaw in a lot of the characters that we see as well, it was great for that little kid, reading those comic books. It wasn't great for the Aboriginal writer or artist who wanted to write comic books because there was not a job for them. And so now we're actually starting to see those Aboriginal creatives take ownership of their stories, and that's other level.
And I saw a few episodes of that as well, and it was quite good, quite enjoyable. Yeah. And I believe it's been signed on for another season.
Yes, so they were writing season 2 late last year.
Yep.
Hopefully in production soon, so we can keep our fingers crossed that'll be coming out soon.
Marvel's probably one of the more recognised creators and distributors of comic books in the world. And even they've had their swipe or a take or a go at creating an Aboriginal character or comic book, which was Aboriginal Gods. Thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't get to actually read the comic book, which was frustrating. A lot of following the threads online, you can find snapshots or a panel, but actually getting your hands on some of the comic books was really hard. But it was this random website about superhero religions that I found the reference to the gods, and apparently it was mentioned in the very early 80s in a Thor comic, which makes sense, Asgardian gods, talking about other realms of other cultures' gods and tying them in.
Yeah.
But I think, the big difference and what really sort of floored me when I was reading it is these aren't relegated to the era of mythology and legends and stories that have been adapted. Aboriginal spirituality still exists, so it was kind of the equivalent for me looking at it. I was like, well, Marvel, would you go down the Jesus superhero character book? Would you go down that, that path? And so I can see why they did it, and there's part of me they look pretty cool. And they've got shapeshifters and move between dimensions and super strength and ancient gods on par with the Norse gods, but they're actual characters, they aren't invented.
Yeah.
So there's the Rainbow Serpent, which people would know. There's Bayami, which is a central creation figure on the East Coast, Daramul, and I think there's 6 or 7 of them. And I didn't recognise all of them because they're scattered around Australia, but like I said, I knew a few where it's that's the actual name, that's the actual character.
Yeah.
And coming out in the late 80s, it was where...
You sort of beg the question.
Where did you get that? Well, people nowadays who want to find out about this stuff, there's not that much readily available information. A lot of it, there are stories where you've got to go and hear those stories from the people who have the right to tell those stories, and that's traditionally how it's meant to be. But there's limited bits of info online, but they did their research. So I don't know if there was Aboriginal involvement or consultation, or if they just found an old book and just lifted it straight from it.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's one that didn't sit all that well with me.
Yeah.
But I can see where they were coming from with already having what they consider to be myths and legends more so than active religions, and pulling it into that space.
Yeah, it'd be a great read. It'd be fantastic if you have a copy, by all means, please.
I was going to say I would love to know how they actually treat the characters.
Yeah.
So all it was a description on the on the comic book religions website that gave a bit of a description, but there wasn't any panels, there wasn't any frames, there wasn't any real storylines. So I'd love to know if they did them justice.
There was a television show in the 1974, was it?
73?
73, basically black. And there was a superhero skit which was created for that television show. Probably not very appropriate these days. In fact, it might be a derogatory comment, but the skit was called Superboom.
Strange visitor from a northern tribe who came to the city possessing powers far beyond those of mortal curries. Faster than a killer boomerang, and able to leap over tall gum trees in a single bound. Superbong uses his secret identity as mild-mannered Aboriginal ex-boxing champion Lionel Mouse to fight a never-ending battle against racism wherever it may be found.
Hi guys, seen any racism around? Not today, bud. Oh, looks like someone's in need of help from the Yard for Abbo. I think I'll race into the toilet of this hotel and change. What's up, bud?
They don't allow blacks in that pub.
And that's still a reality. Yeah. There's a lot of pubs that don't let Aboriginal people in. Yeah. It's something we hear in the media, frighteningly often. But to have that so much in your face and making fun of a practical reality that a lot of Aboriginal people were dealing with. And we talk about how great comic books are for a way to get those really hard topics out. Comedy, music, art forms are so powerful as well. And Yeah, it's to have one of our earliest Aboriginal superheroes is this parody of really just smacking the country in the face and saying, wake up to your racism. Like that's why we couldn't have an Aboriginal superhero.
Yeah,
you wouldn't let him in the pub to get changed. So it was brilliant.
It's an eye-opening clip.
Good morning. I am a human being. Cut!
Now listen, you guys. These are proud and sensitive people, okay?
Okay.
They've had a pretty rough time, but we're going to start treating them as human beings, right?
Right.
Right. Cue the bong.
Just so revolutionary at the time that was actually written by Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
And an all Aboriginal sketch comedy show. So, when they played white characters, they'd put on like a white mask, which was a parody of blackface of the day. And so, very subversive, very subtle, but very in your face.
Yeah.
And Super Bong was in line with that philosophy of what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to, tiptoe around sensitive issues. And, I guess they found out very quickly that Australia wasn't ready for it because they got cancelled pretty much instantly.
Yeah.
Aboriginal people, we had to wait 40 years, and Australia had to wait 40 years to get another Aboriginal-driven sketch comedy show. And there was famously Ernie Dingo would pop up on Fast Forward and Full Frontal as, one man. The next one was Black Comedy, which is only a couple of years old.
Yeah.
So we had to wait a full 40 years to get another run. But Superbung, as much as that is a word I wouldn't actually say in any other context, it's a word that I would just, it might as well be the N word for Australia. So, but that for us, I think it's very outdated. It's not a word that you actually hear even racists say that word anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of, but at the time it was a very commonly used racial slur.
Welcome to colour television.
As far as illustrators and Aboriginal writers of comic books go these days, do we have any?
Yeah, they're out there. Sadly, probably not getting as much work and recognition as they deserve. But like I said, Cleverman, Ryan Griffin was the brains behind that. So I think he's probably the most successful Aboriginal writer who's actually created superheroes and put them out. I'd love to see a comic or graphic novel series of that come out too. So hopefully they can explore that world a little bit more through that medium. Brenton McKenna, who one that I actually missed in the first run and added in an updated version of the article, did Ubi's Underdogs, which is set in 1940s Broome, and is this really cool mix in graphic novel form. There's a few of them out there, bringing in elements of Aboriginal spirituality and Oriental spirituality. And so, they talk to the spirits here, and Chinese, like Broome, for those who don't know, like right up top West Australia. So a lot of interaction with Asia over the years, and that history goes back, well into before the 40s, which is when it's set. She's got a little gang of people of different cultures, so little white kid, little Asian kid, everyone, and she's the boss of them, this tough little girl. And they're called the Underdogs, and so they get into all sort of really cool old, Tintin style almost adventures. And he's great, and like I said, the fact that I missed it and I was out there looking for him says that it was a bit harder to find than it probably should have been.
Certainly not enough recognition, but what a great storyline is to have all the heritage and the histories and everything combined and work together. And probably something we could mention or look at down the line. If you're an Indigenous illustrator or comic book reader, then by all means, please get in touch with us. We'd love to feature you and have a chat and see what you're doing out there. Luke, excellent. Thank you very much for coming along. And again, if you know of any other comic books or comic book series or anything that would align with what we've been talking about today, we'd love to hear from you. By all means, get in contact with us through Facebook. The details are on your screen now, or through Twitter, and you can get in contact with Luke that way. Luke Pearson, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Happy Australia Day.
Happy Survival Day.
Hi, I'm Alicia Jade. I work on the comic 7 and also publish through Petrie Press and run the Banksia project. And I just wanted to say Happy Invasion Day!
So, oh my god, Bishop is Aboriginal.
I had no idea, right?
Who knew?
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Next thing we'll be telling us is that Wolverine's Australian as well.
Well, in some instances, he is.
He is, yes.
So, on the topic of Aboriginal superheroes, Cleverman, an amazing Aboriginal series produced here in Australia. Now, it's just been renewed for a second season. It received fantastic reviews in the States as well as in Australia. Now, it's about a young man who is the Clever Man. He is endowed with powers from Dreamtime figures. And it boasts an outstanding Aboriginal cast. Even Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones, that plays Jorah Mormont, is in this show.
I haven't seen this show, so this is all new to me, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. The hairy people in the show, their costumes, the SFX makeup, is all created by Weta Workshop.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. So if you guys haven't checked it out yet, see if you can track it down. As far as I know, it's not on ABC iView at the moment, but they could be putting it back up for Australia Day, cross fingers. Otherwise, keep your eyes peeled for it on DVD.
Hi, I'm Miranda Richardson. I'm Rosanna Lamb, and we're from Adelaide. We write and produce a superhero comic called Hail about a girl who crumbles into shards of glass as a symptom of anxiety attacks. It's about overcoming long-term struggles and having fun times fighting crime. Thank you for supporting Australian comics. Have a great year.
Hi guys, joining me now is Alex Hammond from Sydney Comics Guild. Tell me, what is it all about?
The Sydney Comics Guild is basically just a group of comic artists who hang about together.
Oh, okay.
We do a lot of social events, just hanging about making comics.
Nice.
And then we try and support each other.
Wonderful.
It's a very solo act to do, and it is very nice to have other supporters and to try and find people who might know some information about publishing and inking and writing and just all the things you need to know.
Oh, wonderful. So besides artists, you have writers involved as well?
We have artists, writers, people who do both of them. We have a few just publishers, editors as well, and then a few comic fans who come along just to enjoy chatting about comics.
Oh, okay, so it's a well-rounded group. It's not just industry people, but there's also the public as well. So what sort of programs do you run throughout the year in the Sydney Comics Guild?
So each month we run one social event and one workshop. The social event is basically us sitting around talking about comics. It's very laid back and casual.
Okay.
The workshop will just be a topic that the guild has chosen to learn about. Next month in February it's about backgrounds. We're doing it with Queenie.
Oh, cool.
This month we're going to do some stuff about business. And then we also do Comic Shine, which is just us setting up a studio in a commercial art gallery and just making comics for the day. So
cool. Okay. So who can get involved with these sorts of programs?
Anybody.
Yep.
We have a big selection from amateurs to a few professionals like Queenie Chan.
Yep.
It tends to be, since comics is such an interesting and diverse industry, you do have a lot of people who might be considered amateurs but are still selling their comics a lot.
Oh, okay.
And selling mini comics and zines at Supernova. And you might have some professionals who are only doing it on the side. So we have just about everybody and just about any type of comic maker.
That's cool. So tell me more about the events that you hold throughout the year. Not the workshops, but the social gatherings.
For the social gatherings, we mostly just hang about. We do have a library at the commercial gallery. We are sponsored by Artshine, and we have a little library there which anybody is welcome to come and have a look at.
Great.
And they can read a lot of local comics. We have a section for Sydney's and for Australian comics.
Yeah.
And then we have lunch and talk and draw. Yeah.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to come along and get involved with the guild, where could they find out some more information?
We do have a website, so sydneycomicsguild.com. We do also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. The Facebook group tends to be a lot of banter and just us chatting about things. And we also have a newsletter which will have more regular, more official events where we tell you what's going on and what things we're promoting at this point in time.
Okay, great. So guys, check out the website, and if you're interested in joining the guild, why not talk to Alex herself?
Hi, I'm Angie Spice, and my latest comic, Courier, is out now. Happy Australia Day.
Hey guys, Pete here from Kapow, and today we're joined by a very special guest, David Yardin. How are you, man?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you, dude. Now, David has been a professional comic book artist for 16 years now. Tell me, David, how does one go in about breaking into such a hard job to crack, I guess?
Geez.
Where'd you start?
Well, the way I got in was actually, it's quite a long story. I don't know if we've got time to cover it all. I'll try and give a condensed version. But basically, I trained under Will Spataccio. He's an American artist, obviously. He's fairly popular, with Image and the X-Men and all the stuff he was doing at Marvel. I actually trained under him in the Philippines for 2.5 months. And I ended up getting work through his company, which was Avalon Studios at Image Comics. way back in 2000. So
feels like a long
time
ago.
That's kind of the short answer. But yeah, I basically took my portfolio overseas. I was wanting to go to the States and get work.
Yeah.
I ended up taking a detour to the Philippines because a friend of mine who's actually Filipino had told me about a school and a studio that Wills had set up there. So basically I tried my luck going by the Philippines, but yeah, it was a couple of trips, and then eventually I ended up at Wills's, and that was my entryway into the comic book media.
Very
as a
nice.
professional.
Lucky you went to the Philippines
Yes.
after all that, man. And so what happened after that? Like, was it just flat out work once you got in the door, or?
Pretty much. I was at Image for quite a while. I took a bit of time off because basically I just got married and had a kid at the time, and so working for yourself, we wanted to get a house and everything, and so basically I took a full-time job to just get the loan, and then I went back to comics. So I did that for a year, but I've pretty much been full-time doing comics since then.
Very nice, man. And tell me, what are some of your favourite titles that you have been able to work on over your long career?
Oh, geez. Probably my most favourite is X Factor.
Mm-hmm.
My 4.5 year cover run on that, mainly because I got to do whatever I wanted to do, experimenting, and I got to colour for the first time. It was very, very much like I said, when I spent time at Wilson's, I had such a leap forward with my creative skills, and probably on X Factor, that gave me the opportunity to sort of have another, not as big as of a leap, obviously, because I was working at the time and busy on deadlines. There's only so much you can learn on the job.
Yeah.
But that again gave me, as I said, that allowed me to experiment and do a lot of things, so that I felt that I had more artistic abilities that I could bring to the job after that gig. So that was a big one that I really liked. But I've had a lot along the way. District X at Marvel was my first gig there. Even Aria when I started at Image, that being my first gig, and learning the ropes.
Yeah.
Under a deadline and all of that sort of thing. But even all the way up to Injustice. Lately, all the X-Men books and things that I've worked on. There's been things that I've liked about each job. There hasn't really been any bad jobs that I've had.
Born in Australia, your parents Mauritian, and you grew up reading French comic books, I believe.
Yeah, well, my parents, they spoke English, French, and Creole, but obviously growing up in Mauritius, it was more French-based stuff that they were exposed to. So Asterix, Tintin, Lucky Luke, all of that sort of stuff was the stuff I grew up reading, comics-wise. The American superhero stuff. It's mainly only TV shows, the old Kirby cartoons, Super Friends, that kind of thing, and the live action stuff too. Wonder Woman, the Hulk, all of that sort of stuff. I was exposed to, but my first American comic I got was actually Ninja Turtles. So
nice.
Basically, when I was younger, though, it was pretty much all Asterix and Tintin. That were my main two that I was sort of into.
Was it while you were reading Asterix and Tintin, was that at that age where you were like, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to draw comic books?
Not so much. I actually wanted to be an animator.
Oh, nice.
I was really into animation, especially a lot of the Japanese stuff. Japanimation, as they used to call it back then. It's anime now. Battle of the Planets was my first art teacher. I used to sit in front of our little black and white TV and copy that. By the time Ninja Turtles came on, and Robotech and all that sort of stuff, we had a VCR and I wore that pause button out.
Sit there and copy down those blurry still frames. Speaking of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you and Jon Sommariva shared a studio together. What was it like working with Jon?
Yeah, my buddy Jon. We actually had a couple of people in with us at the studio. So me and Jon basically formed the studio together. The point of the studio was, one, having a creative environment to work in. If there's any questions you have as an artist, you can quickly, hey Jon, look at this, what can I do here? Daniel Picciotto was the other guy who had us, and Lauren Marshall was another girl who joined us from Perth later on. Like me and Jon probably been in the longest in the industry, and Daniel and Lauren were kind of getting in, so they're at different levels. But we were learning off everybody in the studio. They would have feedback as well for us.
Yeah.
Me and Jon about what we were doing, and the other thing is, we're slightly competitive.
You and
you know,
Jon in particular?
But not just me and Jon, just
artists.
Comic artists in general. You
Yeah.
know, if you see a kick-ass image that somebody's doing, you know, you kind of like, I got to try and do better than that. You know,
up that guy.
You got to up your game and stay relevant in the industry, and you know, it kind of pushes you further. If you're seeing somebody else do awesome artwork over there, you want to do something as good or better. You know.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing is just industry talk, you know, talking business with him. Like, for 14 years, I was basically working by myself at home. And it's a very solitary profession, so you're not talking to anyone. And, you know, having to do business deals when, especially when we're on this side of the world and you don't really know that much about the industry, you know, it takes a lot longer to find out things, you know, whereas if you've got somebody there, you can, hey, does this sound right, you know? Oh, this person told me this, or I heard this from somebody else, you know, and they can verify stuff like that. But yeah, the main thing about it was having a creative environment and a place where we could just go and concentrate on our art. And we decked it out with all these comic posters. We had a Batman mask on the door. We didn't end up having a name for the studio, but we ended up calling it the Bat Cave. It was affectionately known as that, but yeah, it didn't really have an official name, our studio, so it was just a really cool place where we could hang out. You know, the comic shop was down the road, the art store was down the road, and we were right on Church Street, so there was lots of food options down the road as well. So it's cool to hang out afterwards as well, you know, after we've done our work.
One more question though, if it was the Bat Cave, were you Batman or Alfred?
I'm not sure who I was. I think we all like to think we were Batman, except maybe Lauren. But
Hey, I'm Lucas Testro. And I'm Larry Boxall. And we're 2/5 of the Radioactive Lounge podcast. Everything you need to know in comics and pop culture.
And a whole lot more you probably don't. We hope you're having a great Australia Day. And hey, why don't you do the Australian thing and listen to an episode of the Radioactive Lounge right now.
Available on iTunes or at radioactivelounge.com.
And don't take any Aboriginals land today, okay? Because it's rude and not nice.
Agreed.
Hi guys, well it's no secret that we've been a bit slack with doing comic reviews on the show, so to make up for that we've got Chris from the website and he's going to run us through the best Aussie books from 2016. Hi Chris.
Hello.
So what have you read that you've enjoyed this year?
I don't know, it was kind of hard to pinpoint just one,
Mm-hmm.
so there was a few of them. Bip and Tracks was definitely a highlight by Daniel Watts, definitely check that out. It's a unique spin on intergalactic real estate agents, so sort of delve deep into the mind of a madman, if anything. Another one would be 5 Seconds by Stephen Koch. It was a different spin on superpowers and time manipulation. Another couple of things that you should look out for in 2017 would be Tim Malloy, his book series Mr. Unpronounceable, insane artworks.
Yeah.
On top of that would be Matt Kimes, The Demon, and That Bulletproof Kid. Very, very different.
Okay. What sort of stories are they? Are they more action or?
If you can imagine sort of The Phantom, but a lot more detailed and actually sort of goes more into a storyline and maintains that more so than leading you on to another comic.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. So.
Oh, definitely.
Something to look out for at a convention near you or online.
Hey there, my name's Matt Kime. I'm the creator, writer and illustrator of That Bulletproof Kid and The Demon. I hope you spend your Australia Day reading comics.
Pete! This is Pete! You know, we just had a barbecue out back in the pool, a few beers, man.
Did we? Okay.
Rounded up the sheep. It's Australia Day.
Sure,
right?
yeah, yes, that's true. We did a few burnouts in our ute.
We did, man. I like the new XR8 you've got going on. Very nice.
Thank you. XR8?
Yeah.
Is that a type of ute?
It's a Ford, isn't it? I don't know. The Maloo? Can we just go with that?
Okay.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Anyway, aside from doing burnouts in our fully sick utes, you
Yeah.
also are a comic book artist.
That's true. That is very true.
And recently, you have just released Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures.
I didn't release it on my own. It was released by a comic book company, but...
I was going to run with that, man. I'll give you all the glory.
I helped them out, you know. I did my part.
Nice. What part was that?
Just the drawing.
Just the drawing?
Yeah, sitting there drawing all day, slaving away.
Were you a fan of either Batman or the Ninja Turtles?
Definitely.
Beforehand?
Okay, yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah.
Like, especially this version of them, which is Batman the Animated Series, which was all based on Bruce Timm's artwork, his designs. And that was just a series that I grew up on. I used to watch that after school every day, and it was just such a great TV show. And it's a real influential piece of work, actually, on even today. You know, like you see a lot of those things creeping into even Batman today and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was I was really excited to get to work on that version of Batman. And then with the Turtles, you know, like the new Nickelodeon series has just been awesome. Like really, really cool stories. They've done a really completely fresh sort of take on it, but also keeping true to a lot of the original elements from the Ninja Turtles, like stuff that we used to love from it. So it's really cool getting to work on those guys in one comic book, you know.
Back when you watched that as a kid, would you sit down and draw, you know, the Batman from the cartoons? Like, was that something how you started getting into?
Yeah, more the Turtles, I would say. Like the old 80s or 90s, whatever that series was that first came out of the Ninja Turtles. Like, you know, I was a massive fan of that. You know, I grew up on that as a kid, and I used to draw them all the time, you know, back in school and everything. And then with Batman, I think I was definitely a big fan of the show, but I can't really say that I used to draw Batman that much. Like, it wasn't really until I started drawing the series that I really, really got into drawing Batman and learning what makes that character, you know, like sort of tick and all that kind of thing. And now I'm feeling pretty comfy with him, you know. I'm
Yeah.
Sort of like 5 issues in, and I'm, you know, my Batman muscles are strong.
Give us your Batman voice.
I am the Batman.
Man, that's pretty good. Yeah, dude, I'll run with that. That's cool.
Sideburns, Pete.
Thank you, man. I'm not going to try and do Batman. You just destroyed me on that one. Now, aside from that, another comic book, which I only recently found out that you had finished, is this one right here.
Yes.
Gemini. Now, I first read the first issue of this back in Canberra. Canberra boys.
Yeah.
Represent. Back in about 2006, if I'm not mistaken.
Come on. Like, that's probably accurate.
Yeah. And dude, I remember reading the first, the second, and the third.
Yeah.
And then the comic book shop I worked at, which closed down, House of Heroes, which does make an appearance in here, along with Impact Comics, another great comic shop in Canberra.
From Canberra, yeah. Represent.
I don't know, man. Tell me a little bit about it. It's such a great story, and finally, 10 years later, we get the final issue, number 5, man, in the trade version.
Yeah. Okay, well, the story's written by Jay Ferber, so he was actually the guy that gave me my big break in comics originally. So he you know, contacted me and asked me if I wanted to work on you know, some comics, and I hadn't really done anything before, and you know, he liked what he saw and kind of kicked off my career from there. So years later, I wanted to try doing, you know, creator-owned book again, and I got in touch with him, and we decided to come up with this story here, which was Gemini. So basically, it's the rundown is, you know, it's a superhero whose identity is so secret that even he doesn't know it. His name's Dan Johnson. He's a normal guy, and what happens is there's this organization called the Constellation, and they kind of wake him up and make him go do superhero stuff. And he doesn't know that he's a hero. The hero doesn't know that he's a civilian. And then what happens at the end of the issue, it's a big event. I don't know if I want to spoil it for people. They should read it.
Don't spoil it for me.
Yeah, okay. But something happens and he sees his face for the first time. And when he sees his face, he has to discover, he thinks, you know, who am I? Like, he has to go and discover his true identity. And so this story is about him, you know, figuring out about this, you know, secret organization and how to escape from their evil clutches, that kind of thing. So
what's it feel like to finally get it out though after 10 years?
Okay, so that is just a massive weight off my shoulders. It was something that was burning in the back of my mind all the time. Like every project that I worked on, I just knew that I wanted to get Gemini finished, and it was like a big personal goal. And the thing is, like when I first started working on it, I was pretty green. I was kind of struggling with learning how to draw on the days where you don't feel like drawing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the reality of it was I needed to make money, you know, I needed to make a living off my job. And so I started taking freelance work that actually paid, where, you know, when you're working on creator-owned, sometimes, you know, it's not something that you actually get paid for. You're doing it for yourself, you know, and especially with Image Comics around that kind of time. And so, I kind of put it on the back burner, and as you know, the years go by, I'm working on other things, and there was delays and all that kind of thing. And then finally I blocked out some time, and, you know, the interesting thing about this actually for artists is they might be keen to check it out, because there's a progression that you can see in the artwork, because it spans probably 8 years. So and me working on other projects in between. So all of a sudden you've got a guy that's learned this much, and he's now coming back and drawing the same thing. So hopefully that's something that people find interesting in the book. You know, I think it's kind of cool to see that journey in other artists. So maybe people would enjoy seeing that with my work. My mum's Spanish. Mm-hmm. My dad's from Chile. Mm-hmm. So, you know, obviously I look very Spanish and Chilean. But if I was to speak Spanish, then that would probably give it away. Yeah, that's my background.
Yeah.
I was born in Sydney, so I've been here my whole life, pretty much, you know. But I have visited those countries. And spent time there. Love the food.
Are there any Chilean, like, comic book characters?
Yeah, characters. Well, actually, there's a very famous Chilean comic book character, which is kind of like the equivalent of maybe Asterix or Tintin over in Europe.
Yep.
His name's Condorito. So he's like a very cartoony version of a little condor, and he was kind of like Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck type cartoons, you know. And, funny thing was, or interesting little fact, my granddad actually was asked by the guy that used to draw that comic to be his assistant. So my granddad was kind of involved in comics in that way as well. So.
No way.
Yes, very proud.
So did your granddad at all sculpt you at a young age as regards to you drawing?
Both of my grandparents, actually. Both of my granddads, they're painters. One draws more, you know, with pencil and that sort of thing, and the other one's a painter.
Yep.
My dad also liked drawing quite a lot, and my mum was pretty creative as well. So yeah, it kind of runs in the family, I guess. I like to think of it like it was like the powers came from two sides and went and just like came down on me. Sort of monkey magic, you know? Like elemental forces worked upon the rock.
Red hair, rosy cheeks.
I'm looking at your sideburns, man. Monkey magic. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, this mob top. Yeah. So anyway.
Don't buy this.
Oh.
Don't buy it.
That's it. Australia Day.
Take this outside, John.
That's how we do it.
But seriously, if anyone out there would like to buy this, where can they find it?
All right. Well, thank you for asking me about that. It's
plug-in time.
I'm actually selling these right now on my art store, which is jonsommariva.bigcartel.com. You can look it up there. I'm selling it, and I'm offering a version where you can buy it with a little head sketch if you like. It's quite a deal, I think. You know, I bang them out and send them out, and it's free shipping in Australia. You have to pay American dollar, but the conversion rates are not too bad at the moment.
Is it free shipping to Queanbeyan?
To Queanbeyan, they'll get a special mining team to go down the hole and deliver it to your house, so no problem at all.
I'll get one. What else have you got up on your Big Cartel store?
I'm selling prints. I've got original artwork, which is something that I've started adding more recently. So, you know, some of my original Ninja Turtle pages and that sort of thing, they're all going up there. For anyone that's interested in, you know, a nice, unique, one-of-a-kind type item.
Yeah, nice.
Got some stickers on there, my art books as well. So, I just keep it pretty updated and that sort of thing. So, we'll be, launching Gemini officially at Impact Comics.
In Canberra. Get down there.
Between 1 to 4, I'll be there. I'll be on time. I'll answer questions. We can just hang out, whatever.
And Good times. You mention Kapow Comics, John will also A, take a photo with you, and B, say anything you want him to in his Batman voice. Is that right, John?
There you go. All right, I'll do that.
Yeah?
Sure.
Sweet. I'm going to
go
to Canberra, man, just for that, yo. But seriously, go down there, support a local comic shop in Canberra, man. There's only 2 left down there. And, dude, support a great Australian artist as well.
Thanks
because that is what Australia Day is all about.
Australia Day.
Beers, utes, beaches, barbecues aside.
Vegemite,
yeah. What else did we invent?
Snags. Meat pies.
Kangaroos.
Lamb chops.
Snakes. Spiders.
Uluru. We didn't invent that. That kind of
John Howard? John, dude, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having you on
Good
here.
to see you. Thanks.
All the best in the future, man. Stay tuned for more, guys.
Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Dean Rankin. I'm a comic book artist and writer, and I work on The Simpsons, Futurama, and Itty Bitty Bunnies in Rainbow Pixie Candyland. And happy Australia Day.
Thanks for joining us for our Australia Day special, and we'll see you next time on Kapow.